I am Mason, 28 years old, and the only reason I am alive to speak to you today is because my little brother committed a crime to save my life. Before I tell you how we ended up surrounded by the FBI on a rain-slicked bridge, staring down the barrel of a gun held by the man I called Dad, I need you to understand something. We were the perfect family, or at least that's what the neighbors thought. But if you're listening to this, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. It helps me feel a little less alone in this. It started at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. You know that specific kind of silence that fills a house in the deep suburbs? It's heavy, oppressive. I was sleeping in the attic room, the one they converted for me when I moved back home after college to save money. I was deep in a dreamless sleep when I felt a hand clamp over my mouth. My eyes snapped open. Adrenaline flooded my system instantly. I reached up to grab the wrist, ready to fight, but then I heard the voice. Mason, stop. Don't make a sound. It was Leo, my 16-year-old brother. I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. The only light came from the street lamp outside, filtering through the small circular window, casting long, warped shadows across the floorboards. Leo was kneeling by my bed. He was wearing his pajamas, but he had his backpack on. He was shivering so hard his teeth were almost chattering. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was what he was holding in his right hand. It was a knife, and not just any knife. It was Arthur's hunting knife, a custom-made piece with a bone handle and a 6-inch steel blade. Arthur, our father, kept that thing locked in a glass display case in his study. He loved that knife more than he loved us. He used to polish it on Sundays while watching football. Leo, I whispered, pulling his hand away from my mouth. What are you doing? If Dad finds out you open the display case. He didn't have it in the case, Mason, Leo whispered back. His voice was trembling, cracking under the weight of terror. It was on the kitchen counter, next to the bleach. I sat up, the sheets falling away. What? Look at it, Mason. Leo thrust the blade toward me. I squinted. The tip of the blade was dark. At first, I thought it was rust, but Arthur would never let his precious knife rust. I reached out and touched it. It was sticky. Is that blood? I asked, my stomach turning over. It's dry, Leo said. But look at the handle. I took the knife from him. The bone handle, usually pristine white and beige, was smeared with a reddish-brown residue in the grooves. I went downstairs to get water, Leo said, the words spilling out of him now. I heard them, Mason. Mom and Dad. They were in the sunroom. The door was cracked open. Talking? At 3 in the morning. Not talking. Planning. Leo grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. They were talking about the camping trip this weekend. The one they promised us for months. I nodded slowly. The annual family trip. We were supposed to go up to the cabin by the lake. It was meant to be a bonding experience, or so Evelyn, our mother, had insisted. She had been making a big deal out of it, buying new gear, talking about how we needed to reconnect as a family. They aren't taking us camping, Leo said, tears finally spilling over his cheeks. Mason, Mom said. It has to look like an accident, just like the boating mishap in '08. And then Dad laughed. He said, don't worry, by Monday morning we'll be grieving parents again. The insurance payout will cover the new expansion for the business. I froze. The air in the attic seemed to drop 10 degrees. My brain tried to reject it. It tried to tell me that Leo was having a nightmare, that he was sleepwalking. Parents don't kill their kids for insurance money. Not in our neighborhood. Not when they drive a Mercedes and host charity galas. You must have heard them wrong, I said, though I didn't believe it. I was trying to be the big brother, the rational one. I didn't, Leo hissed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wallet. It wasn't his. It was a thick, brown leather wallet. I found this in the trash bag they had by the back door. They must have forgotten to burn it. I opened the wallet. There was a driver's license inside. The face was a man I didn't know. A guy named Patrick Vance, from Ohio. There were credit cards. A photo of a little girl. Who is this? I asked. I Googled him on my phone in the bathroom, Leo whispered. He's been missing for 2 weeks. He was a private investigator. I looked at the ID, then at the knife in my hand. The pieces started to click together, but they formed a picture so grotesque I wanted to vomit. The late-night business trips Arthur took. The way Evelyn would scrub the garage floor with industrial cleaner at odd hours. The way they looked at us, not with love but with assessment, like we were livestock. "They're going to kill us, Mason," Leo said, his voice breaking. "Dad said." He said, "Mason is getting too old. He's asking questions about the trust fund. And Leo is starting to remember things he shouldn't. They're going to do it this weekend." I looked at my brother. He was 16, skinny, obsessed with coding and video games. He had never hurt a fly. And then I thought about Arthur. A man who smiled with his teeth but never his eyes. A man who insisted on absolute obedience. "Did they hear you?" I asked. "I don't think so." But the floor squeaked when I ran back up. I heard Dad stop talking. Silence. We both froze. From 2 floors down, in the dead silence of the house, I heard it. Thump. A heavy footstep at the bottom of the stairs. Then another. Thump. They weren't walking like someone getting a glass of milk. They were walking with purpose. Slow. Deliberate. "They know," Leo breathed. "Mason, we have to run. Right now." I looked at the digital clock. 2:51 a.m. My entire life I had been the good son. I did my chores. I got good grades. I came back to work for the family business when they asked. I had suppressed every instinct that told me something was wrong with this family. I had ignored the coldness, the lack of baby pictures, the way we were isolated from everyone else. But in that moment, staring at the bloody knife and the terrified eyes of my brother, the good son died. "Grab your bag," I said, my voice steady. "We aren't going out the front door." "The window?" Leo asked. "The window." I threw off the covers. I was wearing gym shorts and a t-shirt. I grabbed a pair of jeans from the floor and pulled them on, shoving my feet into my boots without tying them. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, and my phone. Thump, thump. The footsteps were on the second-floor landing now, outside my parents' bedroom. But they weren't stopping there. They were heading up the narrow stairs to the attic. "Go!" I pushed Leo toward the skylight. Our attic room had a small access window that opened onto the lower roof of the garage. We used to sneak out there to smoke cigarettes when we were teenagers. Well, I did. Leo just kept watch. Leo scrambled up the desk and pushed the window open. The cold night air rushed in, smelling of wet asphalt and rain. He shimmied through. I paused for a second. I looked back at the door to my room. I could see the shadow of feet under the door frame. The knob slowly began to turn. It wasn't locked. I never locked it because Arthur didn't allow locked doors in his house. I didn't wait to see who entered. I vaulted onto the desk and squeezed through the window, pulling it shut just as I heard the bedroom door crash open against the wall. I slid down the shingles of the garage roof, landing next to Leo in the gutter. We were outside, but we were far from safe. We were in the backyard of a monster, and he was awake. "The truck?" Leo asked. I had an old Ford pickup I used for work. "No," I said. "It's parked in the driveway, right under their bedroom window. If we start it, they'll shoot us from the balcony." "Then how?" "The garage," I said. "We take the Porsche. Mom's car." Leo's eyes went wide. "She'll kill us." "Leo," I grabbed his shoulders, looking him dead in the eye. "She's already trying to kill us." We dropped from the garage roof into the bushes. The wet leaves slapped against my face. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. We crept toward the side door of the detached garage. This was the moment. This was the point of no return. If we went back inside, maybe we could talk our way out of it. Maybe we could say we were just scared. Maybe Arthur would just laugh and send us to bed. But then I remembered the knife, the blood, the stranger's ID. There was no going back. We were refugees in our own home. "Stay behind me," I whispered. I tried the handle of the side door. Locked. "Damn it," I cursed. Move, Leo said. He pulled a thin piece of metal from his pocket. A lockpick set. He'd bought it online months ago. For fun. I had scolded him for it then. Now I wanted to hug him. He worked the tool into the lock. His hands were shaking, but his movements were precise. Click. The door swung open. We slipped inside the garage. It smelled of oil, rubber, and something else. Something chemical. Bleach. There were 3 cars in the garage. My father's black SUV. The Lamborghini Urus that belonged to my younger brother Ethan, the golden child. And my mother's Porsche Panamera. Keys, I whispered. Where are the keys? Usually they kept a spare set in the tool cabinet. I rushed over, fumbling through the drawers. Hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches. No keys. Mason, Leo called out from the other side of the garage. He was standing by the trunk of the Porsche. I found them. They were left in the trunk lock. In the trunk. That was odd. Evelyn never left keys in the trunk. I walked over. Sure enough, the keys were dangling from the trunk release. But Leo wasn't looking at the keys. He was staring at the trunk itself. It was slightly popped open. What is it? I asked. The smell, Leo said, covering his nose. I leaned in. The scent of industrial bleach hit me, burning my nostrils. But underneath that chemical sting there was something else. Copper. Rot. The smell of something that used to be alive. I lifted the trunk lid an inch. Inside, lined with thick plastic tarp, were heavy bags. Not luggage. Heavy, black contractor bags, wrapped in duct tape. And in the corner of the trunk, pushed partially under a bag, was a shoe. A man's dress shoe. I slammed the trunk shut. My hands were trembling uncontrollably now. Get in the car, I commanded, my voice barely a sound. Get in the car right now. We weren't just running from abusive parents. We were running from serial killers, and we had just stolen their hearse. I slid into the driver's seat of the Porsche Panamera. The leather was cold against my back. The interior smelled of Evelyn's expensive perfume, Chanel No. 5, masking the faint, sickly odor seeping from the trunk. Leo jumped into the passenger seat, throwing his backpack into the footwell. Don't start it yet, I hissed. Wait for the garage door. I pressed the button on the visor to open the main garage door. Nothing happened. They cut the power, Leo said, panic rising in his voice. Mason, they cut the power to the garage. Of course they did. Arthur was thorough. He knew we were out of the room. He knew we had to be somewhere. We have to ram it, I said. What? Through the door. It's fiberglass. The car can take it. I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. For a split second, before I pushed that ignition button, my mind flashed back. It's funny how your brain works when you think you're about to die. It tries to find a reason, a logic to the madness. I thought about last week. Ethan's 25th birthday. We were in the backyard. There were catered waiters passing around hors d'oeuvres. Arthur was standing on the patio, holding a glass of scotch, looking like the king of the world. Evelyn was laughing that fake, tinkling laugh of hers. And there was Ethan. Ethan, the golden child. He didn't look like us. Leo and I have dark hair, olive skin. Ethan was blonde, blue-eyed, tall. He looked exactly like Arthur. For years, I thought Leo and I just took after some distant relative. Happy birthday, son, Arthur had boomed, handing Ethan a small velvet box. Ethan opened it. A key fob. The Lamborghini logo gleamed in the sun. No way, Ethan had grinned, looking over at the driveway where a bright yellow Lamborghini Urus was parked, a giant red bow on the hood. You guys are the best. I was standing by the refreshments table, wearing a suit that was 2 years old. I had asked Arthur for a raise at the family logistics company the week before. I needed money to fix the radiator in my truck. He had told me, money is tight right now, Mason. You need to learn to be frugal. Sacrifice is part of the business. Money was tight. Yet here was a $250,000 car for Ethan, who had dropped out of college twice and spent his days playing tennis and consulting for the firm. I remembered the look Ethan gave me that day. He walked past me, spinning the key fob on his finger. "Nice shoes, Mason," he'd sneered, looking down at my scuffed loafers. "Maybe if you work hard, Dad will let you wash the Lembo." I had just clenched my jaw. That's what I always did. I clenched my jaw and took it, because Arthur and Evelyn were the ones who saved us. That was the narrative. We were orphans, they told us. They took us in when no one else wanted us. We owed them. We owed them our lives, our labor, our obedience. Ingratitude is a sin, Mason. Evelyn would say whenever I asked about my birth parents. "Don't you know how much we've sacrificed for you?" Sacrifice. I looked at Leo next to me in the Porsche. He was hugging his knees. He looked so small. "Ready?" I asked him. "Just go," he whispered. I pressed the start button. The engine roared to life. A deep, guttural growl that vibrated through the chassis. It was a beast of a machine. I shifted into reverse. "Hold on." I slammed the gas pedal. The car shot backward. The rear bumper collided with the garage door with a deafening crunch. Wood and fiberglass splintered. The car shuddered, but the torque of the Porsche was immense. We tore through the door like it was made of paper. Glass shattered. Debris rained down on the roof. We were out. We were in the driveway. I slammed the brakes, shifted into drive, and spun the wheel. That's when I saw him. Ethan. He was standing on the front porch. He wasn't wearing his pajamas. He was dressed in black tactical gear, pants, vest, boots, and he was holding an AR-15 rifle. This wasn't a panic reaction. He was dressed for work. "He's got a gun," Leo screamed. Ethan raised the rifle. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look shocked. He looked focused. Pop, pop, pop. I heard the impacts before I saw them. Bullets slammed into the hood of the Porsche. One spiderwebbed the windshield on the passenger side. "Get down." I shoved Leo's head toward his knees. I floored it. The tires screeched against the wet pavement. The car fishtailed, then gripped. We rocketed down the long, winding driveway. More shots rang out. I saw the side mirror explode into plastic shards. We hit the main gate. It was iron, heavy, and imposing. I didn't slow down. If the car died, we died. "Brace for impact." Bang. The collision threw us forward against the seatbelts. The airbags didn't deploy, thank God, or we would have been blinded. The iron gate buckled. The lock snapped, and the gate swung open with a screech of tortured metal. We were on the street. I didn't let up. I kept the pedal mashed to the floor. The speedometer climbed. 60, 80, 100 miles per hour. We were flying past the manicured lawns of our wealthy neighbors, tearing through the silence of the night. "Is he following?" I shouted, my eyes glued to the road, trying to navigate the curves through the shattered windshield. Leo sat up, turning to look out the back window. "I don't see lights." But Mason, Ethan was ready. He was waiting. "I know," I said. He knew about the plan. "No, Mason," Leo said, his voice trembling. "You don't understand. Ethan isn't just the golden child. He's one of them." "What do you mean?" "I heard them talking about his graduation," Leo said. "I thought they meant college. But when I was listening tonight, Dad said, Ethan is ready for his first solo cleanup. The boys will be his test." My stomach dropped. The cleanup. The boys. Ethan wasn't just a spoiled brat. He was an apprentice, and we were his final exam. I drove for 10 miles without speaking. I took random turns, zigzagging through the county roads, heading away from the highway where cameras would be. I needed to think. I needed a plan. "We need to ditch the car," I said. "This thing has GPS. Evelyn can track it from her phone." "Not just GPS," Leo said. He was tapping furiously on the dashboard screen. "This car is connected to everything. Mason, look at the recent destinations." I glanced at the screen. Location 1, the quarry. Location 2, 445, Industrial Park Road, the incinerator. Location 3, home. "They've been busy," I muttered. Mason, Leo said, opening the glove compartment. We need money. Did Mom leave her purse? There was no purse, but there was a thick black notebook. Leo pulled it out. He flipped it open. What is it? I asked, swerving to avoid a deer that darted across the road. It's a ledger, Leo said. He turned on the map light. It's a list of names, dates, and numbers. Like a business ledger? Yeah, but listen to the entries. Judge Miller custody dispute solved. $50,000. Senator K whistleblower issue solved. $150,000. Solved? I repeated. That means dead. Mason. Leo's voice went quiet. Look at the entry for last month. Patrick Vance, investigator solved. $10,000. Patrick Vance. The man whose ID was in the trash. The man whose body was probably in the trunk right now. And look at this. Leo pointed to the bottom of the page. Next week's date. The Reed brothers loose ends pending. $0. Pro bono. The Reed brothers. Who are the Reed brothers? I asked. Leo looked at me, tears streaming down his face again. We are, Mason. That's us. Our last name isn't Cross. It's Reed. I almost drove off the road. What? I found our birth certificates in Dad's safe last year, Leo confessed. I didn't tell you because I was scared. I thought maybe we were adopted because our parents died or something. But Mason, if we are loose ends, then our parents didn't die by accident. I finished the sentence for him. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Arthur and Evelyn killed them. My hands tightened on the wheel until they hurt. All these years, the abuse, the psychological torture, the feeling of being indebted to them. It was all a lie, a sick, twisted game. They had murdered our real parents and then kept us as... What? Pets? Trophies? Camouflage? Why? I asked. Why keep us? To look normal, Leo said, reading from a page of notes tucked in the ledger. It says here, family cover established, community trust gained, suspicion low. We were props. We were nothing more than props in their perfect suburban play, designed to make a pair of contract killers look like a wholesome American couple. And now that the props were getting too old, too inquisitive, it was time to strike the set. We're not going to the police, I said, making a sharp left turn onto a dirt road. Why not? We have the ledger. Because, I said, remembering the names Leo had read. Judge Miller, Senator K. Arthur has clients in high places. If we walk into a police station with this book, we'll never walk out. We need someone higher. We need the feds. But how do we find them? I don't know, I said. But first, we have to get rid of this car. It's a tracking beacon. I saw a sign ahead. Old Mill Truck Stop 2 miles. We're swapping cars, I said. Get your pick set ready, Leo. We're going to steal something that doesn't have a computer in it. As we approached the truck stop, the dashboard screen lit up. A message popped up. Incoming message, Ethan. Leo read it out loud. Nice driving, big brother. But you forgot to fill the tank. You have 40 miles left. I'm in the Urus. I'm 10 minutes behind you. And Mason, I'm going to enjoy this. I looked at the fuel gauge. The light was on. 38 miles to empty. He's tracking us live, I said. Turn here, Leo shouted. I yanked the wheel, sliding the Porsche into the dark, gravel lot of the truck stop. We had 10 minutes. 10 minutes to disappear or we were dead. The truck stop was a graveyard of rusty metal and diesel fumes. It was one of those places that time forgot, filled with long-haul rigs sleeping for the night and broken-down sedans that hadn't moved in years. I killed the headlights of the Porsche and rolled it behind a stack of shipping containers. My heart was pounding a rhythm against my ribs that felt like a drum solo. Out, I commanded. Wipe everything you touched. Door handles, dashboard, steering wheel. With what? Leo asked. Use your shirt. Just do it. We scrambled out. The rain was coming down harder now. A cold, biting drizzle that soaked us instantly. while Leo frantically rubbed down the passenger side. I ran to the trunk. I had to know. I popped it open again. The smell washed over me, stronger now that the car had stopped. I ripped open the black plastic bag. A face stared back at me. It was gray, eyes clouded over, mouth frozen in a silent scream. It was the man from the ID, Patrick Vance. There was a bullet hole in the center of his forehead. "Oh God!" I gagged, stepping back. "Mason!" Leo hissed. "Don't look at it. We have to go." He was right. I slammed the trunk. I grabbed the ledger Leo had taken from the glove box. "Leave the phone," I told Leo. "My phone." "Yes, they can track it. Leave it in the car. Let them think we're still here." Leo hesitated, then threw his iPhone onto the driver's seat. We were ghosts now. No technology. No digital footprint. We ran through the rows of parked cars. I was looking for something specific. Something old. Something without OnStar or GPS. That one. I pointed. A 1998 Chevy Astrovan. It was a rust bucket, faded blue, with a ladder rack on top. It looked like it belonged to a painter or a plumber. "Can you pick it?" I asked. Leo was already at the door. He jammed his tension wrench into the lock. His hands were shaking so bad he dropped the pick. "Calm down," I whispered, though I was terrified myself. I looked at the entrance of the truck stop. I could see headlights in the distance. Yellow LED headlights. The distinctive squint of a Lamborghini. "He's coming," I said. "Leo, hurry." "I'm trying." Click. The lock turned. We threw the door open and piled inside. The van smelled of old paint and stale cigarettes. "Ignition?" I asked. "I can't pick the ignition, Mason. I don't know how to hotwire." Leo panicked. I looked around. I checked the visor. Nothing. I checked the ashtray. Nothing. "Check under the mat," I said. It was an old trick. Contractors often left keys for their employees. Leo lifted the rubber floor mat. Yes, a rusty key. I jammed it into the ignition and turned. The engine coughed. It whined. "Arrrrrr. Come on," I begged. "Come on, you piece of junk." I pumped the gas pedal. Vroom. The engine caught with a cloud of blue smoke. "Lights off," I said. I put the van in gear and we crawled out of the spot, heading toward the back exit of the lot, a dirt path that led into the woods. Just as we reached the tree line, the Lamborghini Urus roared into the main entrance. It didn't slow down. It drifted around the fuel pumps, its high beams cutting through the rain like lasers. I watched in the rearview mirror. Ethan stopped right next to the Porsche. He jumped out, rifle in hand. He approached the Porsche tactically, checking the corners. He ripped the door open. He saw the empty seats. He saw Leo's phone. Even from 100 yards away, I saw him smash the phone against the pavement. He looked around, scanning the darkness. For a second, his gaze seemed to sweep right over our van. I held my breath. If he saw us moving... But the van was dark, blending into the trees. Ethan turned back to his car, grabbed his phone, and made a call. "He's calling Dad," Leo whispered. "Go," I said to myself. I navigated the van down the dirt path, bouncing over potholes, until we hit a secondary road. I didn't turn the headlights on until we were a mile away. "Where are we going?" Leo asked. He was holding the ledger against his chest like a shield. "Oregon," I said. "Oregon? That's across the country. We're in Ohio." "I saw an address in the ledger," I lied. I hadn't seen an address. But I remembered something. A letter I had found years ago, hidden in a book in the attic. A letter from a Rachel in Portland. Evelyn had snatched it away and burned it, saying it was junk mail. But the name stuck. "We need to get out of the state," I said. "But first, we need to know what we're dealing with." I drove for an hour, putting distance between us and the monsters. We found a 24-hour diner in the middle of nowhere. I parked the van around back. "We need Wi-Fi," I said. "Did you bring your iPad?" "Yeah, it's in my bag." I turned the Wi-Fi off. "Good. Turn it on, use the diner's guest network. Use a VPN if you have one. I always use a VPN, Leo said, offended. We sat in the back of the van. Leo booted up the iPad. Search for the Reed couple murder, I said. Leo typed it in. The search results loaded. Double homicide in suburban Chicago. Investigative journalist Michael Reed and wife Patricia found dead in apparent murder-suicide. Murder-suicide, I whispered. That's their signature. Make it look like an accident or a domestic dispute. Look at the date, Leo said. November 14th, 2008. I was 10, I said. You were barely walking. Mason. Leo tapped the screen. There's a photo. It was a grainy newspaper scan. A happy couple holding two little boys. The man had my jawline. The woman had Leo's eyes. For the first time that night I cried. Not from fear, but from grief. I had mourned the loss of parents I never knew, but seeing them, seeing that they were real, that they loved us, they stole us. I choked out. They killed them and they stole us. Why didn't they just kill us too? Leo asked. I took the ledger from him. I flipped through the pages until I found the year 2008. Contract. Michael and Patricia Reed. Client. Redacted. Fee. $500,000. Note. Children secured. Asset value potential. High. Cover identity utility. Maximum. We were assets, I said, my voice cold. They kept us because a single man and woman moving into a quiet neighborhood might look suspicious. But a family with two young, traumatized boys? That's the perfect disguise. Who suspects the nice couple who adopted orphans? We weren't children to them. We were camouflage. And now the camouflage was wearing thin. Suddenly, the iPad screen flickered. What's happening? I asked. I don't know, Leo said. The screen is glitching. A face appeared on the screen. It wasn't a glitch. It was a video call. An incoming override. It was Evelyn. How? I shouted. We ditched the phone. The iPad, Leo yelled. It's linked to the family iCloud. They're using the Find My network. I went to smash the iPad, but Evelyn's voice stopped me. Mason, darling, she cooled. The video feed was dark, but I could see her silhouette. She was in the passenger seat of a car. A moving car. Don't break the tablet. We just want to talk. Go to hell, I said. Language? She scolded, as if I had just spilled milk. Listen to me closely. You have something that belongs to your father. The book. Bring it back and we can discuss a severance package. You can go to college. We'll give you money. Like you gave Patrick Vance? I spat. There was a pause. Then Arthur's voice came from the driver's side. Mason, you're a smart kid, but you're playing a game you don't understand. You think the police will help you? I own the local precinct. You think the FBI will care? I have files on half the field office. Bring the ledger to the Hawking Bridge. Now, or we start hurting people. Who? I asked. We don't know anyone. Oh, you don't? Arthur chuckled. We found a letter in your room, Mason. From a girl named Sarah? Your girlfriend. My blood froze. Sarah was the only person I had ever opened up to. We had broken up 6 months ago, but I still had her letters. Leave her alone. The Hawking Bridge. 1 hour. Where Sarah gets a visit from Ethan. He's very eager to try out his new knife. The screen went black. I sat there in the dark van, breathing hard. He's bluffing, Leo said. He doesn't know where Sarah lives. He knows everything, I said. He's a professional. I looked at the ledger. It was our only leverage, but it was also a death sentence. We can't go to the bridge, Leo said. It's a trap. I know, I said, but we can't let them hurt Sarah. So what do we do? I looked at the rusty tools in the back of the van. A hammer, a crowbar, and a few cans of paint thinner. We go to the bridge, I said, but we don't go alone. Who are we taking? I looked at the ledger again. I flipped to the back. There was a list of contacts. One of them was circled in red with the note, "Do not engage. Dangerous." It was a number for a private security firm in Chicago. Or so it seemed. But underneath, in tiny pencil scratch, Arthur had written, "Fed snitch." "Give me the iPad," I said to Leo. "I need to send an email." "To who?" "To the one person Arthur is afraid of." I drove the Chevy Astro van like it was a tank. The rain had turned into a full-blown storm. Thunder rattled the loose windows of the van. "Did you send it?" I asked Leo. "Sent," Leo said. "I attached the photos of the ledger. I sent it to the email address you found in the notes. R. Caldwell at FBI of Renee Caldwell, the Fed snitch. If Arthur was afraid of her, that meant she was the real deal. What if she doesn't check her email at 4 a.m.? Leo asked. "Then we're on our own," I said grimly. We were 20 minutes from Hawking Bridge. It was an old steel truss bridge over a deep gorge, about 10 miles outside of town. It was isolated, perfect for a meeting, perfect for an execution. "We need a weapon," I said. "I have the lockpicks," Leo offered weakly. "That won't stop a bullet." I pulled the van over near a construction site. I jumped out and grabbed a piece of rebar from a pile of scrap. It was heavy, rusted, and about 3 feet long. It wasn't much against an AR-15, but it was better than nothing. "Mason," Leo said when I got back in. If we don't make it." "Don't?" I cut him off. "We are making it." "But if we don't," he persisted, his voice small. "I'm glad you're my brother, even if we aren't real brothers." I reached over and ruffled his hair. "We are real brothers, Leo. Blood doesn't make family. This," I pointed between us, "this makes family, and I am not going to let them touch you." We arrived at the bridge approach. I killed the lights. The bridge was shrouded in mist. I could see the silhouette of 2 cars parked in the middle. The Rolls-Royce Cullinan, Arthur's pride and joy, and the yellow Lamborghini. They were parked side by side, blocking the road. "They're here," I whispered. "What's the plan?" "I'm going to walk out there," I said. "You stay in the van. Keep the engine running. If you hear shots, you drive. You drive and you don't look back." "No!" Leo grabbed my arm. "I'm not leaving you." "Leo, listen to me. You are the witness. You have the digital copies of the ledger. If I die, you have to get that to Caldwell. That is the only way to make them pay." I shoved the ledger into his hands. "Hide this under the seat. I'm going out there with a decoy." I grabbed an old phone book from under the dashboard, a relic from the 90s left in the van. I wrapped it in a dark towel. In the rain and dark, it would look like the ledger. "Mason, lock the doors," I said. I stepped out into the rain. The wind was howling across the gorge. I gripped the rebar in one hand, hidden behind my leg, and the fake ledger in the other. I started walking toward the lights. 30 yards, 20 yards. The doors of the Rolls-Royce opened. Arthur stepped out. He was wearing a long trench coat, holding a black umbrella. He looked like he was going to a funeral. Evelyn stepped out from the passenger side, wrapped in a fur coat, looking annoyed by the weather. Ethan jumped out of the Lamborghini. He didn't have an umbrella. He had the rifle, slung over his shoulder, pointing at the ground. "You came," Arthur called out. His voice carried over the wind. "Smart boy. Where is she?" I shouted. "Where is Sarah?" "Safe," Evelyn said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "For now. We haven't sent the order yet. Give us the book, Mason." I held up the towel-wrapped bundle. "It's right here." "Bring it," Arthur commanded. I took a few steps forward, stopping about 10 feet from them. I could see their faces clearly now. There was no love there, no familiarity, just cold, hard calculation. These were predators looking at prey. "You killed my parents," I said. It wasn't a question. Arthur sighed. "We gave you a life of luxury, Mason. We fed you. We clothed you. We educated you. And this is how you repay us? By digging up ancient history? You killed them." I screamed. They were in the way, Arthur shrugged. Just like you are right now. Now, hand over the book, and maybe I'll let you walk away with just a broken leg. Liar, I said. You're going to kill us anyway, just like Patrick Vance. Ethan stepped forward, raising the rifle. Dad, stop talking to him. Let me finish it. Patience, Ethan. Arthur held up a hand. Mason, look at the situation. You have a stick. We have firepower. Don't be a hero. Give me the book. I looked at the bundle in my hand. Then I looked at the edge of the bridge. The drop was 200 feet into jagged rocks and rushing water. You want the book? I yelled. I swung my arm back and hurled the bundle over the railing. It disappeared into the darkness. For a second, there was total silence. Arthur's face went purple. You idiot, he roared. Kill him, Evelyn shrieked. Ethan raised the rifle, aiming straight at my chest. I braced myself for the impact. I gripped the rebar, ready to charge, knowing I would never make it. Click. A bright white spotlight blinded us from above. The thumping of rotors filled the air. A helicopter rose from the gorge, hovering just above the bridge cables. FBI, drop the weapon. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. At the same time, headlights flooded the bridge from both ends. Armored SWAT trucks smashed through the barricades I hadn't seen. Drop it. Now. Ethan looked up, confused, the rifle still raised. Ethan, put it down. Arthur screamed. But Ethan was twitchy. He was young, arrogant, and stupid. He swung the rifle toward the helicopter. Crack. A single shot rang out. Not from Ethan. The rifle flew out of Ethan's hands, spinning through the air. Ethan screamed, clutching his shattered hand, falling to his knees. Move! 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 SWAT team members swarmed the cars. I dropped to my knees, covering my head. I heard shouting, the sound of handcuffs clicking, Evelyn screaming. Do you know who I am? I'll sue you. Someone grabbed me by the shoulder. I flinched, swinging the rebar. Easy. Easy. A woman's voice. I looked up. A woman in a tactical vest was standing over me. She had stern eyes but a calm face. Mason Reed? She asked. I nodded, unable to speak. I'm Agent Renee Caldwell, she said. We got your email. We've been waiting for a reason to take these bastards down for 6 years. You just gave it to us on a silver platter. I looked back at the van. Leo was running toward me, crying. We're safe, I whispered, dropping the rebar. The adrenaline crashed. We're safe. The chaos on the bridge was controlled, but intense. The flashing blue and red lights painted the wet asphalt in a dizzying strobe effect. I sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, a shock blanket wrapped around my shoulders. A paramedic was checking a cut on my forehead. I hadn't even realized I was bleeding, probably from the glass shards back at the garage. Leo was sitting next to me, holding a bottle of water with both hands. He hadn't let go of my arm since he ran out of the van. Across the bridge, I watched them. Arthur was pressed against the hood of his precious Rolls-Royce, his hands cuffed behind his back. He wasn't screaming anymore. He was staring at me. His gaze was venomous, promising 1,000 deaths. Even in chains, he tried to exert power. Evelyn was crying, but it was a performance. She was yelling about police brutality, about her rights, about calling her lawyer. And Ethan was being loaded into another ambulance, screaming in pain as they treated his hand. The sniper had taken off 2 of his fingers. Agent Caldwell walked over to us. She held up a clear evidence bag. Inside was the ledger. This is it, she said. This is the Rosetta Stone. We've decoded the first few pages. It links them to 3 unsolved murders in the last year alone. And the names, judges, COs. This is going to be a massive RICO case. What about us? I asked, my voice hoarse. What happens to us? We're taking you into protective custody, Caldwell said, until the trial is over. It's going to be a long process, Mason. But you're safe now. Can I talk to him? I asked, looking at Arthur. Caldwell hesitated. I wouldn't advise it. I need to, I said. I need to know one thing. She studied my face, then nodded. 2 minutes. With armed guards. I stood up and walked over to Arthur. The rain had stopped, leaving a heavy mist in the air. Arthur straightened up as I approached. He smirked. Coming to apologize, Mason? It's too late. I'll be out on bail by morning. You won't, I said. Not with the ledger. Not with the body in the trunk of the Porsche. Arthur's eye twitched. He didn't know we had found the body. I want to know, I said. Why didn't you just kill us back in 2008? Why raise us? Arthur laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. You want the sentimental answer? There isn't one. It was business. We needed a cover. A childless couple moving into that neighborhood, buying a warehouse. It raises flags. But a young family? Nobody looks twice. You were props, Mason. Expensive props. We called you Dad, I said, feeling a tear slide down my cheek. We loved you. And that made it even better, Arthur sneered. The more you loved us, the more loyal you were. I was building the perfect soldiers. Ethan was almost ready. You were a disappointment. Too soft. Too much like your real father. My real father was a hero, I said, remembering the newspaper clipping. He died trying to expose people like you. He died screaming, Arthur whispered, leaning in. And so will you. I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time in my life, I didn't see a giant. I didn't see an authority figure. I saw a pathetic, cruel old man in handcuffs. No, I said, stepping back. I'm going to live. I'm going to testify. And I'm going to watch you rot in a cell for the rest of your miserable life. I turned my back on him. Mason, he shouted. Mason, come back here. I made you. You are nothing without me. I kept walking. I walked back to Leo, back to the only family I had. The FBI safe house wasn't like in the movies. It wasn't a luxury penthouse. It was a bland, beige motel room on the outskirts of Columbus, completely taken over by agents. It had been 12 hours since the bridge. I was sitting at a small round table, drinking terrible coffee from a styrofoam cup. Leo was asleep on the couch, exhausted. Agent Caldwell came in holding a thick file. She looked tired too. We processed the car, she said, sitting down opposite me. Patrick Vance's body was in the trunk. The ballistics matched the gun we found in Ethan's room. And the ledger, Mason, the ledger is a goldmine. We've already made 4 arrests in Chicago and 2 in New York based on the data. So it's over? I asked. The immediate danger is over, she said. Arthur and Evelyn are being held without bail. The judge saw the photos of the farming project, the ones of you kids. He denied bail immediately. The farming project, I shuddered. Is that what they called us? Caldwell opened the file. I have something for you. It's about your biological parents. I braced myself. Michael and Patricia Reed, she began. They were investigative journalists for the Chicago Tribune. In 2008, they were working on a story about a trafficking ring disguised as an adoption agency. Arthur and Evelyn were the enforcers for that ring. She slid a photo across the table. It was my parents. They looked happy, normal. Your father hid a drive, Caldwell said. Before they were killed, he hid a hard drive with all his evidence. He mailed it to his sister. His sister? I asked. I have an aunt? Yes, Sarah Reed. She lives in Oregon. Oregon. The fake destination I had told Leo. It was a weird coincidence. Or maybe fate. Why didn't she come for us? I asked, feeling a spike of anger. Why did she leave us with them for 15 years? She didn't know where you were, Caldwell said gently. Arthur and Evelyn staged the scene to look like a murder-suicide where the children drowned in the nearby river. No bodies were found, but you were declared dead legally. Your aunt, she never believed it. She spent her life savings on private investigators. She's the one who hired Patrick Vance. My breath hitched. Patrick Vance wasn't just a random victim. He was hired by my aunt to find us. He had found us. and he died for it. She knows you're alive, Caldwell said. We called her an hour ago. She's on a plane right now. She'll be here tonight. I looked over at Leo, sleeping soundly for the first time in God knows how long. We weren't alone. We weren't just assets or loose ends. We were wanted. We were loved. There's one more thing, Caldwell said, her voice dropping. The inheritance. I don't care about their money, I said. Burn it. Not their money, she said. Your parents' money. Michael and Patricia had life insurance policies. And a trust. It's been sitting there, accumulating interest for 15 years, waiting for proof of life. The significant, Mason. Enough for college for Leo. Enough for you to start over. It's not blood money. It's your parents' final gift to you. I put my head in my hands and wept. For the first time, the tears weren't out of fear or frustration. They were out of relief. We had lost everything. Our innocence, our childhood, our sense of safety. But we had gained something too. We had the truth. And we had a future. The door opened, and a young agent stuck his head in. Agent Caldwell? The aunt is here. She arrived early. I stood up. My legs felt shaky. Send her in, Caldwell said. A woman walked in. She looked older than the woman in the photos, her face lined with grief and worry. But she had my eyes. She had Leo's chin. She stopped in the doorway, looking from me to the sleeping boy on the couch. Her hands flew to her mouth. Mason? She whispered. Aunt Sarah? I choked out. She ran to me. I haven't been hugged like that since I was 5 years old. It was a desperate, crushing hug. A hug that tried to make up for 15 years of absence. I found you, she sobbed into my shoulder. I promised I would find you. I held her tight, looking over her shoulder at the rain falling outside the window. The storm was over. The nightmare was done. We had run through hell, stolen a Porsche, and taken down a criminal empire. But standing there, in the arms of a stranger who loved me, I realized the most important thing wasn't what we ran from. It was what we ran toward. The flight to Oregon was a blur of white noise and anxiety. I sat in the middle seat, Leo by the window, staring blankly at the sea of clouds below. Aunt Sarah. I was still getting used to calling her that. Sat on the aisle, pretending to read a magazine, but I saw her eyes darting toward us every few minutes, checking, always checking. It had been 6 months since the bridge. 6 months of depositions, protective custody in stale hotel rooms, and endless interviews with forensic psychologists. The FBI had dismantled Arthur's network. They called it the cleaner ring. It was all over the news. Suburban serial killers. The headlines screamed. The House of Horrors. But for us, the horror wasn't the headlines. It was the silence that followed. When we landed in Portland, it was raining. Not the angry, slashing rain of Ohio that night, but a soft, misty drizzle that made everything smell like pine needles and wet earth. Sarah drove a beat-up Subaru that smelled like dog hair and vanilla. It was a stark contrast to the sterile, leather-scented luxury of Arthur's cars. It's not much, Sarah said as we pulled into a gravel driveway about an hour outside the city. But it's safe. And it's ours. The house was a small, A-frame cabin tucked into a hillside of Douglas firs. There were no security gates, no cameras, no hidden rooms. Just a wooden porch with wind chimes singing in the breeze. For the first few weeks, I couldn't sleep. I would patrol the house at 3 a.m., checking the window latches, checking the deadbolts. I found Leo sleeping in the bathtub one night, a kitchen knife under his pillow. It's okay, I whispered, sitting on the cold tile next to him. We're out. They can't hurt us. I know, he said, his voice small. But I still hear his footsteps, Mason. I still hear Arthur walking down the hall. Recovery isn't a straight line. It's a jagged, messy scribble. We had the money now. The inheritance from our real parents was substantial, unlocked by the FBI's findings. We could have bought a mansion. We could have bought Ferraris. But we didn't want things. We wanted peace. We used a chunk of the money for therapy. Dr. Evans, a specialist in severe trauma, told me something I'll never forget. Mason, you spent your life surviving. You don't know how to live yet. You have to learn it, just like you learned to walk. The turning point came on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. I was outside, trying to fix a broken trellis in Sarah's garden. I had always loved landscaping. It was the one thing Arthur let me do because it saved him money on gardeners. But this time, I wasn't doing it to avoid a beating. I was doing it because I wanted the roses to survive the winter. Sarah came out onto the porch, holding a rusted metal box. She looked nervous. "Mason," she called out, "can you get Leo? I have something to show you both." We gathered at the kitchen table. The box sat in the center, heavy and covered in scratches. "Your father," Sarah said, her hand resting on the lid. "Michael." He was paranoid near the end. He knew they were getting close. He mailed me this box 3 days before it happened. He told me to open it only when I found you. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was a time capsule from the grave. Sarah opened the lid. Inside, there were no diamonds or cash. There were cassette tapes, a stack of Polaroids, and 2 leather-bound journals. "He recorded everything," Sarah said. "Not just the investigation, but you boys." I reached out and picked up a photo. It was me, maybe 4 years old, sitting on a man's shoulders, Michael's shoulders. We were laughing. There was a genuine light in my eyes that I hadn't seen in the mirror in 20 years. "Play the tape," Leo whispered. Sarah put a cassette into an old player she had on the counter. She pressed play. There was a hiss of static and then a voice. A woman's voice. Warm, raspy, and filled with a terrifying amount of love. "It's November 10th. Kennedy is asleep, sorry, Mason. That was your name. Kennedy. And Julian. Little Julian is finally down for a nap." Leo looked at me. Kennedy and Julian. Those were our names. Not Mason and Leo. Those were the names Arthur gave us like he was naming dogs. The voice continued. "Michael is worried. I see him checking the street. If anyone finds this tape, if you boys are listening to this without us, it means we failed. It means the bad men won." I gripped the edge of the table. "But listen to me." The voice, my mother, cracked. "You are not who they say you are. You are not burdens. You are the best thing we ever did. Kennedy, you are so protective. You always share your toys with Julian. And Julian, you are so smart, already trying to take apart the toaster." Leo let out a wet, choked laugh. "They might try to erase us," she said. "They might try to make you forget. But you have to remember, you are made of love, not fear. Never fear. We love you to the moon and back. Always." The tape clicked off. Silence filled the kitchen, but it wasn't the heavy, oppressive silence of Arthur's house. It was a holy silence. I looked at Leo. For the first time, I didn't just see a victim. I saw Julian. I saw the brother my parents loved. "We aren't the Cross brothers," I said, my voice steady. "We're the Reeds." That afternoon, we went to the courthouse. It was a mountain of paperwork. But we did it. We legally changed our names back. I became Kennedy Mason Reed. He became Julian Leo Reed. We kept the middle names as a reminder, a scar of what we survived. The change in us was palpable after that. It was like we had exorcised a ghost. I started designing a new garden for Sarah, a massive project with koi ponds and Japanese maples. I poured my soul into the dirt, reclaiming the skill I had learned in captivity and using it to create beauty. And Leo, Julian, he stopped hiding. He set up a computer lab in the basement. But instead of hacking for survival, he started taking online courses in cybersecurity. "I want to catch them," he told me one night over pizza. "Not just people like Arthur, but the people who hire them, the people on the dark web. I want to hunt them down." "You'll be good at it," I told him. One evening, about 8 months after we arrived, a car pulled into the driveway. My muscles tensed instinctively. I reached for the gardening shears in my belt. It was a delivery truck. The driver hopped out. "Package for Kennedy Reed?" I signed for it. It was a heavy crate, I pried it open on the porch. Inside was a tombstone, a beautiful, polished granite slab. Michael and Patricia Reed. Beloved parents. Fearless truth seekers. 1978 to 2008. We had ordered it weeks ago. The next day, we drove to the cemetery where their empty graves had been for 15 years. We had the stone installed. We stood there for hours in the rain, just the three of us, Sarah, Julian, and me. "We made it, Mom," I whispered to the cold stone. "We made it home." That was the moment the new dawn truly broke. It wasn't when we escaped the house. It wasn't when the handcuffs clicked on Arthur. It was when we stood over the graves of our parents and realized that their legacy wasn't death. Their legacy was us. 3 years later, the fluorescent lights of the federal courtroom were humming. A low buzz that seemed to drill into my skull. The air smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. I sat in the front row wearing a suit I had bought with my own money, tailored to fit the man I had become, not the boy I used to be. Julian sat next to me. He was 19 now, taller than me, his shoulders broad. He wasn't shaking. He was staring straight ahead, his jaw set in stone. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Harrison entered. He was an older man with eyes that had seen too much, but today, they looked righteous. Arthur and Evelyn were brought in. They looked small. Prison had not been kind to them. Arthur had lost his weight. His expensive suits were replaced by an orange jumpsuit that hung off his frame. His hair, once perfectly dyed and coiffed, was gray and thinning. Evelyn looked haggard, her face devoid of the Botox and makeup she used to hide her cruelty. They didn't look at us. They couldn't. And then there was Ethan, or what was left of him. He sat at a separate table. His right hand was heavily bandaged, missing 2 fingers. He looked terrified. He had turned state's evidence 6 months ago, trying to cut a deal. He testified against his own parents, detailing every murder, every transaction in the ledger. He thought it would save him. Didn't. "Arthur Cross," the judge boomed. "For the counts of 18 murders, conspiracy, kidnapping, and racketeering, I sentence you to 18 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. You will die in a federal supermax facility." Arthur didn't flinch. He just stared at the table. "Evelyn Cross," the judge continued. "Life without parole." Then he turned to Ethan. "Ethan Cross, while your testimony was helpful, the depravity of your actions cannot be ignored. You were a willing participant. You hunted your own foster brothers for sport. I sentence you to 40 years. Ethan slumped forward, sobbing. As the marshals moved to take them away, Arthur stopped. He turned his head slowly and locked eyes with me. I expected hate. I expected anger. But there was nothing. His eyes were empty. He was a shark that had been beached, gasping for air, realizing that his power was an illusion. I didn't look away. I didn't blink. I held his gaze until he was the one who looked down. "It's over," Julian whispered next to me. "Yeah," I said, letting out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since I was 13. "It's finally over." We walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunshine of a Chicago afternoon. The press was there, a swarm of cameras and microphones. "Mr. Reed, Mr. Reed, do you have a statement?" I stopped. I looked at the cameras. I thought about hiding. I thought about putting my head down and rushing to the car. But then I thought about the thousands of kids who might be in a house right now, hearing footsteps on the stairs, feeling that cold knot of fear. I stepped up to the microphones. "My name is Kennedy Reed," I said, my voice projecting clear and strong. "And my brother is Julian. We were victims of a system that failed to look closely. We were victims of monsters who wore the masks of parents. But we are not victims anymore. We are survivors. And if you are watching this and you are scared and you think you are alone, you are not. Help is out there. Fight, run. Do whatever you have to do to survive. Because your life is worth it." That clip went viral. Millions of views. But viral fame fades. Real life continues. We went back to Oregon. Life moved on, beautiful and mundane. I opened my own landscape architecture firm, Reed and Roots. I specialize in healing gardens, spaces designed for hospitals and trauma centers, places where people can find peace in nature. Every time I plant a tree, I think of it as an anchor, something real and living that can't be taken away. Julian is a sophomore at the University of Oregon. He's top of his class in digital forensics. He's already interning with the FBI field office in Portland, working under Agent Caldwell, who transferred there to keep an eye on us in a good way. He's brilliant. He's gonna catch the monsters that hide in the binary code. We still have scars. I still check the back seat of my car before I get in. Julian still doesn't like loud noises, but the nightmares are fading. They are being replaced by new memories. Last weekend, we went camping. It was just me, Julian, and Aunt Sarah. We drove up to Crater Lake. We pitched a tent under a sky so full of stars it looked like spilled sugar. I built a fire. Real wood, crackling and spitting sparks into the night. We sat around the fire roasting marshmallows. Remember when we thought we'd never do this? Julian asked, looking at the fire. Remember when camping was a code word for execution? Yeah, I said, poking the embers. This is better. He grinned, chocolate smeared on his chin. Much better, Sarah smiled, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. I looked at them, my family, not the one I was born into and not the one that stole me, but the one we built, the one we fought for. I lay back on the grass and looked up at the Milky Way. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running. I didn't feel like I was hiding. I was just here, and that was enough. Looking back at that night when the knife blade gleamed in the moonlight, I realized that the most dangerous thing in that house wasn't the weapon. It was the silence of obedience, the silence of keeping up appearances. If there is one lesson I want you to take from my story, it is this: trust your instincts over your conditioning. We are taught to respect our parents, to be grateful, to not make a scene. But your gut, that primal voice inside you, doesn't care about social norms, cares about survival. If something feels wrong, if the love you are receiving feels conditional or cold, listen to that feeling. Thank you for listening to my journey. It wasn't easy to tell, but it was necessary. I want to hear from you now. What does family mean to you? Is it blood, or is it bond? Or, if this story gave you hope or a new perspective, just comment the word good below. It lets me know that we are connected, and that this story mattered. Stay safe, stay strong,